It's the DC Crossover Podcast with your hosts, Mike Cerrone and Ben Simpson.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the DC Crossover, episode number 66. Right here, listening live on The Contender, or catching us on demand on thecontender.com. That's Contender with a K. Or you might be listening to the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We are everywhere, and we are glad to be here on this Monday evening episode here. Second week in a row, we've done a Monday show. We'll be probably getting back to our Sunday evening schedule soon enough so we can have this show for Monday morning. But a lot of stuff been going on. It was Father's Day weekend. There was some NBA games to be had and watched and consumed over the weekend as well. And there was apparently some sunshine to be consumed as well, as Mr. Cerrone, my partner here, has your shirt is orange, but I can't tell if that's the shirt or if that's your face at this point.
It's definitely the shirt, but because I am more red than the shirt. So me and my lovely girlfriend,
you're the colors of the rainbow.
Yes,
right now.
yes. I'm like a bag of Skittles
yes.
during Halloween.
In many ways.
Yeah, sure. And so we went to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale for about 4 days post end of school. And we were like, all right, we're excited for the trip and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be a truncated version of the details for just the vacation part, because I have some gripes I need to get to as well,
sure.
like usual. So on Friday, we flew in on Thursday. We got stuff for the room and everything like that. And the room was beautiful and stuff like that, so I had to say thank you to her parents. It was kind of a birthday gift to her, and I was fortunate to go along. And it was definitely an awesome room. It was like an end room. We had 2 huge loungers and a table on the balcony, beachfront, everything like that. So first day, we kind of just hung out on the balcony and chilled. The second day, we went to the beach. And usually I am better at this than what I was like before, where I basically sat there and me and her, we got sunscreen on and everything like that, and then we were like, we'll leave in the room. We'll come back up, because we're both not huge beach people. Like, we'll go down there.
Sure.
And I'm the type of person that I like the beach, but I'll go down for a couple hours, something like that. I don't really like sitting down for 8 hours.
The beach move at our age is you bring the cooler, you stock it with drinks, you got the beach chairs, you sit there and you just drink and you look at the ocean. That's all. And then if you get too hot, right, the water is there for you to use it if you need to. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get all sand.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you're covered in sand, and sand gets in all your clothes and all your cracks and your crevices. Yeah. And then the rest of the vacation, you're finding sand in everything you have. Your suitcase gets sandy. It's the worst.
Well, that's always funny when
that's
the people...
Why,
go ahead. You can finish your statement.
Well, I was just going to say, that's why our move at this age is you just sit there and you drink. That's what you do at the beach.
And that's the funny thing is, I always like seeing the people who are just like digging holes and doing random things, and like they literally have their body covered in sand. They're like, oh, let's go wash off. It never works just to go wash off. No. You're going in salt water, so it's like, it's not just like it's going to wash off and you're just going to be perfectly clean like you're in a shower. And I just hate that. So basically, we both said a million times, like, oh, we're just going to stay down there for a little bit and everything like that. And this hotel was beautiful, where they gave us 2 chairs. And we were like, we don't really need it, because the problem was it was overcast, so we didn't really think too much of the sun too much. We were like,
That's the sneaky sun when it's overcast, man.
That sneaky sun.
As you found out.
So basically that day, we were only down there for maybe probably, I'm trying to think, probably like 3.5 hours, which is usually longer than what I would like to do, but we were having a good time. We were just hanging out, people watching. Then we met another couple out there in the ocean, stuff like that, and we were just hanging out.
Were they? What do you mean you met them in the ocean? Were they mermaids?
Yeah, right. No, they were staying at the same hotel, and because the chairs were all laid out and everything like that, they were like 6 feet apart and everything like that. Where we just told the guy when you walk up, like, I'll take those 2 right there, and they were included in the room unless you want an umbrella. You had to pay for that separately.
Which now you're kind of thinking, maybe I should have gone with the umbrella.
Exactly. We were both thinking that after the fact. But so they went in the ocean. My girlfriend went in the ocean, and then I just met him in there, and she was talking to him beforehand. And we were just talking and stuff like that and just BSing out there. And then after a little while, we ended up coming back in, and we were just chilling there for probably another hour and 15 minutes or whatever. So like I said, we were there probably about 3.5 hours. Not too long. It's kind of really on the brink of what I like to stay on there, like on the edge. Because 4 hours is probably my max that I could do that.
Right. Yeah.
And it's not like going to Ocean City where there's 1 million people. This thing was like private basically, and it was like nice because there was only like 20 people surrounding us.
Yeah, that's the way to go. That's the way to enjoy it.
So it was nice. So there was, you can only people watch for so long. But we were talking to them, and then we sat down, and then we got up and we started talking to somebody else on the way out, and stuff like that. So we were out there pretty long, and I was wearing like a cutoff T-shirt because I was like, I need to get some type of tan and stuff like that. So so then later that evening, we were fine, stuff like that. We knew we got a little red, but it was okay. Next morning, you wake up and you look in the mirror and you look like a lobster or something like that. And you're just like, what did I just do?
So you said you wore sunscreen, right? But you just didn't reapply.
Exactly. That's the whole entire point. And the funny thing is that we got the spray type. So, she sprayed it on me, I sprayed it on her, and you can see the lines of where we sprayed. And we were like, this, because you think when you're spraying it, you think you're covering a larger area. But no, you're just spraying like a line. You have to do like you're mowing the lawn or something.
You got to go overboard with that thing. As somebody with a half-sleeve tattoo, since tattoos in the sun, it'll wear away your tattoo. Like, it won't look as good anymore if you don't use enough sunscreen. So, man, I slather it on. I am a big, and look, I haven't been burnt in years, man. So you just you gotta slather it all over your body.
Well, that's the thing. I don't usually get that burnt because I usually reapply after like an hour and a half or something like that.
You tested the sun, man, and
because like I said, the overcast killed me, and also my mom thinks that it was also because we've been on virtual and all that kind of stuff, so we haven't been exposed to the sun for a very long time for the most part. Which I don't.
Okay, I don't know if that has anything.
I don't know if it does either, but we were just trying to find something because I
didn't realize your mom was a scientist.
She is smart for some of these things, but
sure, I believe it.
It's another theory.
I just don't think that's it. No, it sounds to me that you guys just didn't reapply, and that's the key. The reapplication, especially if you're out there for like 4 hours. You're supposed to reapply like every hour and a half or something.
And like I said, we were under 4 hours, so we got out there probably around noon or something, and we left around 3:30, and it just was not good. So the second night, it wasn't Friday night, it was Saturday night, I believe. No, maybe it was Friday night, because that was the day we got burned, and usually shows up like within like several hours or whatever.
Sure.
Oh, that night was rough. I mean, I turned the
It's hard to even sleep because like if it's on your arms and stuff, as soon any sort of pressure. Like if you turn on your side or something, it hurts.
Yeah,
so I mean, I've been there. I've had bad burns before too, man. It's the worst.
I ended up going to the thermostat like 3 times. I ended up turning it down to 63.
Hey, dude, that's what you got to do in a hotel. You got to turn it down as low as possible.
Well, I literally turned it down like 5 degrees right when we got in there. But that night, I remember getting up like 3 or 4 times and like hardly being able to move. It was like the worst night of sleep ever. Sleep in quotations. But that's the thing is, she got burned. Her face was more so burned than anything else. But so you can't see it on screen, but I got my arm wrapped today. I had to go to Inova.
Looked like you had, it looked like you're like a Civil War hero or something.
Yeah, seriously. And so my arms got it the worst. My face is like, it's burned, but it's not terrible. And my legs. So basically, the funniest part wasn't really funny. I mean, now you look back at it. So my knees were like swollen. I don't know how that happened. It looked like I was like the Hulk breaking out into like.
It was probably right above the shorts line is where it got burned for you. Oh man, and just think about this: the peeling is going to be outrageous.
Yeah. So
with your body,
that's the problem.
Like, good thing it's summertime right now, and like you're not having to go to work and stuff because, dude, you would be it's almost like you have dandruff all over your body at that point because literally the skin just falls off. I mean, you just go like this, and it will just like fall off.
Well, that's the funny thing too.
Crazy.
Is like so my legs, obviously, I'm a man, so I got leg hair, so it's not terrible. It hurts a little bit, but at the same time, it's just like my knees. Like I looked at Jess and I was like, "Yo, my knees are like swollen. Like they look like two softballs." And I'm like, because I know what my knees look like because I've had knee injuries, so I know what they look like when they're normal. And the thing is that my arms got it the worst. And I went to the doctors today. My mom insisted on it because she was so worried. And she said,
"Yeah, that's probably."
And I was like, I just want to heal. So maybe I'll go. I usually just bite the bullet and just go, so I can get something stronger or whatever. And I go, and she's like, wow, you look like you have 2nd-degree burns. And she looked at it, and she's like, yeah, this is pretty much equivalent to 2nd-degree burns on your arms.
Oh,
so she wrapped my arm and put like this topical stuff on there, and then she sent me a prescription to go get it and all that stuff. And I was like, oh boy. So, and the funny thing is, I got on the scale, and it wasn't like I was like gaining so much weight over the weekend, but I got on the scale and it said I gained like 6 pounds, and I figured that it was because my arms felt like they were statues, like they were filled with concrete.
It's true.
And like seriously, my arm, dude, it looks like it had like a baseball on the side of it. It was so swollen. I was like, something's wrong with me.
So bad.
I was like,
that's
something's
so
wrong
bad.
with me, and it was just bad because I was like, I know I didn't gain 6 pounds in like 4 days.
You never know. I mean, I feel like I've done that.
You can
before.
do that, but that's the thing, though. I wasn't eating like tons of fatty food or whatever. And on the last day, I wasn't drinking, and we ate just like a little bit or whatever. So it just made no sense. And like I said, I was like, and the doctor actually said that it probably is because of my arms, and because literally, I looked at her and I was like, this is like a statue. Like I can't even move it, and it was just terrible, man. So it's the worst burn I've ever gotten. And it definitely does not feel good. Not to mention her birthday is on Wednesday, so I'm trying to rush the healing process for that kind of stuff. Luckily, she's being...
Yeah, because I assume you guys are going to go out to dinner and stuff and like maybe meet up with her friends, and you're going to be there like the Tin Man. You're just like, you can't even move your arms. You might as well just pretend like you got in an accident or something. Yeah. That way you can like, they'll at least feel sorry for you. But you can't really feel that sorry for somebody who got a bad sunburn because you're like, hey, idiot, there's literally a thing that they make that you can buy to prevent this from happening. All you got to do is put it on your body. So but I feel for you. I've been there.
She's not thriving, nor am I. But I told her because, like I said, she went home yesterday and I went home and I basically said, hey, let's just lay low for a couple days. I'll see you on like Wednesday because it's your birthday or something like that. Or we'll figure something out. But I said, let's lay low. She's like, yeah, I'm laying very. She said she stayed in bed all day today. Like I was like, I don't blame you. I mean, I went out to go to the doctors or whatever, but this has been, this is
brutal.
It's like I said, it's brutal because just like you mentioned, it's on your arms, and that's like what you move the most.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Especially sleeping is brutal. It's the same thing as like if you don't work out for a long time, then you go back to the gym and you go too hard, and your arms are like stiff, like you can't even lift them above your head, and you try to sleep on your side, and it's the same thing. I mean, you're in a world of hurt, but I'm telling you, dude, when you get to that peeling point, that's going to be insane.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like that's what I'm not looking forward to the most, but I'm hoping that because usually for that, I usually take like a few showers in a day just to like help it, like whatever. But we'll see what happens with that. But so that's not a big ideal thing. The weekend was awesome, but that was definitely not ideal. But the one biggest gripe, and I'll try to keep this short and sweet. Before you get to your statement about
well, we'll have to get into the show here.
Okay, well, I can talk about it later. That's fine.
Okay, we'll bring up Mike's gripe later on, but we do. This is a sports podcast. We will get to some of the sports stuff. Mike and I could just do a side podcast.
A lot of stuff happened over the weekend.
On all of our stuff here. Let's dive into the rewind real quick, just to kind of get into a little bit about what has happened this past week in DC sports. And as has been the case the past couple weeks, it's not like a ton is going on because only one, I guess, of the teams is even playing right now. But the Washington Wizards did announce that Scott Brooks will not be returning to coach this team. I don't know if you guys saw our reactions on Twitter, on the Contender account. Follow the Contender with a K on Twitter. Because Mike and I both posted some immediate reactions to that. We'll get into the Scott Brooks stuff a little bit later on in our actual Wizards segment. Besides that, the Washington Nationals, Mike, went 6-1 this week. Huge week for them. I'll start with the Pirates series, and I'll let you take on the Mets. So on Monday, the Nats beat the Pirates 3-2. Kyle Schwarber, who we'll also get to later on, hit his 4th home run in 3 days which we thought was cool back then, and then get to this weekend. But he drove in 2 runs in that game, and they beat the Pirates. Tuesday, beat the Pirates 8-1. Yan Gomes hits a grand slam. Corbin throws 8 in the third, only allows 1 run. Wednesday, beat the Pirates again to complete the sweep. This was 3-1. Paulo Espino gets his first Major League win at age 34. This was a series they had to sweep, and sweep it they did. What about the Mets?
Moving on to the Mets series. Now, this is probably one of, if not the most important series, besides the Pirates series just before that. And the Mets, they couldn't handle the red-hot Nats. I guess you want to call them red-hot because they swept the Pirates. But Friday, they beat the Mets 1-0. Gomes hit a walk-off single. That was a huge win. Then you had the doubleheader on the weekend. They lost to the Mets 5-1 in the first game of the doubleheader. Francisco Lindor drives in all 5 runs, which is kind of rare to see someone drive in all runs in one game.
Yeah.
Because you would think, just walk the guy. But anyways, on Saturday, they finally took down the Mets 6-2 in their second game of the doubleheader. John Lester earns his first Nats win, which is nice to see. And on Sunday, the finale, they beat the Mets 5-2. Schwarber hits 3 bombs, 3 bombarooskis, and ties the Major League record with 5 homers in a 2-game span. So that was very nice to see that they won against the Mets 3-1.
What a weekend and week for the Washington Nationals. And actually, we might as well dive into them first.
Alrighty.
Because we're on the subject of the Nats. We'll get to the Wizards in a bit. But first, let's start with
The Washington Nationals.
With the Washington Nationals, because why not? They're the only team playing right now. 43-36 record right now, 3rd in the NL East. And I guess, the big thing here was you and I had the conversation last show and really for the past couple weeks that this team was going to need, and excuse me, that record is 33-36. That's a typo there on my part. I was about to say, I don't think they're 13 games under 500.
Oh, I thought you said 33-36.
No, 30. I accidentally said 23. 33-36. Only 3 games below 500 right now. 3rd in the division. Because right now the latest division standings in the NL East, well, really they're tied for 3rd, I guess. But the Mets are 36-29. Phillies 34-35. Atlanta's 33-36. The Nats are 33-36, and then Miami's 31-40. Still a pretty crowded division. But we had been talking lately that we were starting to get a little worried about this team, and especially with the start that they had. And we had said that really this Pirates series, and with a lot of division games on the way, that this team really needed to just go out there and just kick butt over the Pirates, and then hopefully have some momentum heading into that Mets series. Hopefully miss Jacob deGrom, which they did, and win that series as well. And that's exactly what this team did. And Mike, I think it gives me a little more hope. Especially, again, we're still in June. There's still a lot of baseball to be played. But, a few episodes ago, we were talking about this team being in 5th place in the division. They weren't really playing well at all. But the interesting thing here is they are winning baseball games, and we don't have Max Scherzer out on the hill. We don't have Steven Strasburg out on the hill. It's Juan Soto has not been hitting that great. He's starting to hopefully put it back together, but he had been hitting like 215 or something in his last 21 games. So the stars aren't necessarily providing all the offense. Trey Turner hadn't hit a home run in forever, and then he finally got one in the Mets series. But it's all these role players that are getting it done, and this team is finding ways to win baseball games, and that's what you need to do. That's how you put yourself back into contention. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, when you look at the schedule, it's nice to see a lot of W's on there. Now, we talked about it multiple times where they're not scoring a lot of runs. Yes, they got a few dubs, without scoring a lot of runs. But you want to be, I always say, in that 4 to 5 run range to give yourself a shot. Now, obviously, you have some starters on every team that may need you to pick them up because they let in 5 earned over 5 innings or whatever it may be, having a couple bad innings here and there. But when you have a trio, I still will throw Corbin in there. With Strasburg, Scherzer, and Corbin, you think about it and say, all right, well, this team doesn't really need to be built to score 12 runs or whatever a game. But like you just said, Strasburg and Scherzer, they've been injured and on the IL and different things of that nature, and day-to-day status and all that kind of stuff. So Corbin comes in, and I thought, hey, Corbin's got to go out there and he's got to throw one of the best games of his life for at least this season. And that's what he did. 8 1/3 is remarkable. You have to go out there and throw. I mean, but he's always that guy that he can do that because he's a contact hitter. He's not going to go out there and he'll have a wipeout slider, but he's the guy that's not going to go out there and try to strike out 11 like Max or whatever, or Strasburg or whatever. So he did what he needed to do, and he actually got us a nice win where he rested the bullpen as well. So that's also nice to see. But you look at some of these games, even in the 7-inning game, or both 7-inning games in the doubleheader. Yes, they did not score a lot with the first one. Okay, that's fine. So they lost, or they had 2 runs in total in 16 innings against the first 2 games of the Mets, and that's not really a great sign. Then they came out the next 2 days and scored 11 total. So that's actually nice to see. Just like I said, you want to stay in that 4 to 5 run range, I think, which is reasonable to get to. And like I've told you many times, my type of baseball is small ball baseball, station to station, go like that. Because if you're not built to have all these boppers like the Dodgers or whoever it may be, then obviously you need to go station to station. Maybe you get a home run from a guy like Schwarber or Soto, Josh Bell from time to time, obviously now. So when you're looking at it, I just think that when it comes down to it, you're seeing a lot of W's on the roster here, and they've won 8 out of the last 10. And that's a good little streak. And we mentioned it last week. We said the Pittsburgh series and the New York series, this is where it's going to be really tight to see, are we going to trade Max Scherzer? And now that it comes down to these standings, this is the biggest time that, hey, there's got to be decision time coming up here soon. Because obviously the trade deadline is looming. And yes, we are only 5 games back. The Phillies right now are 4 games, just like you mentioned. The Braves as well, even though the Braves are down 4-0 to the Mets right now, currently as we record this on a Monday. Marlins, that's a different story. But at the same time, you just got to look at it and say, we're starting to score a little bit more runs. We're starting to get a little bit more, natural feel here in DC. We did have a few games sprinkled in there with less runs than you would like. But just like you said, we're kind of treading water before Max and Strauss come back to the point we can have those type of starts from our aces that can go out there and hold guys to 1, maybe 2 runs max or whatever of that nature, and we can have those chances where we do, if we have bad games and score low runs, we can still have a chance if we score 2 or 3 at some points.
The signs from Corbin have been promising. Here's his last 3 games. So, the game against the Mets over the weekend, he threw 6 innings, gave up 2 earned runs, 4 hits. 7 Ks, decent outing there for sure. The game before was that Pittsburgh game, like you mentioned, 8 1/3, 8 hits, 7 Ks, 1 earned run, 1 walk. And then the game before that, 5 innings, 3 earned runs, not as great, kind of an off start for him. So that brings him now on the year. He's 5-5 with a 5.40 ERA. Still not where you would necessarily want your number 3 guy in the rotation to be. But at the same time, if these last couple games are any indicator, then maybe Patrick Corbin has finally figured it out. And especially the interesting thing is when the weather does get warmer, usually the ball is flying a little bit more around the park. But Patrick Corbin's been able to kind of minimize the damage here of late and been able to pitch really, really well. So that's a great sign, especially with the statuses of Steven Strasburg and Max Scherzer kind of being up in the air now at this point. We've even seen some good starts out of Eric Fetty. I mean, we've got to give him credit. Look, Mike and I, if you are worthy of being trashed in the moment, we're going to trash you. But if you start to turn it around, we're going to give you the credit that you deserve. I mean, that's the thing. And Eric Fetty has, to his credit, been a solid pitching option for this team right now, which is pretty wild to think about it because, again, it's Eric Fetty. I mean, it's a guy that we've kind of made fun of the last few years, but on the season right now, 4-4 with a 3.33 ERA. I mean, that's respectable. Yeah. His last 7 games, he's got a 2.7 ERA. Here's the stats from his last 3. He hasn't given up an earned run in his last 3 starts. 7 innings, 2 hits, no earned runs. 5 innings, 4 hits, no earned runs. 7 innings, 3 hits, no earned runs. Eric Fetty is the ace right now. Right. I mean, it's weird to say. Yep. We're sorry, Eric.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, too, also, is that, when you see 3 starts like that from a guy that's supposed to be our 5, 6, 7 pitcher or whatever you want to label him as.
Who knows? Yeah.
Because he's always been that guy where he's, he's coming in for a spot start, or, they're going to bring him out of the pen for a long relief appearance. Like, that's the thing is, if you see something like that, now we know it's not going to happen every time, and he's going to be pitching against Philly on Wednesday, so and on a day game as well. But that's the thing is, if you see numbers like that, you can't be mad at it, and you have to be, just like you said, you have to sit there and say, that's respectable, especially when we need it the most right now. And we've always said the Nats have been, and everyone on Sports Talk Radio, no matter what station or whatever you're listening to, hopefully you're listening to the Contender with the K, that's the biggest thing is that you're looking at here and saying, you know what? The Nats have always been a slow starter team. I mean, you look at the World Series, they were 19-31, went on to win the World Series. Now, this team may not be as strong as a World Series team that we had then, but when you're looking at it now, it's just like, hey, maybe they just needed a little bit of juice to get going, and right now, even without our 2 aces on the hill, we're starting to get a little juice going because of the sole fact that you just won 3 out of 4 against the division-leading Mets when you had people like John Lester who came back who's been iffy this year, and Corbin who's been iffy this year. It's like you're looking at that, and we won one of the first 2 games with scoring 2 runs total. So hey, we'll take that over division leading Mets any day. But like I said before, they had to sweep the Mets or the Pirates, excuse me, and they did that. So they took care of business there. 8 out of 10 is pretty solid in my book, and you have to give them props for that.
You gotta. The season is so long. There's going to be periods of these mini runs, and you got to take advantage when you're on a heater like they are right now. And that's what they're doing is they're taking advantage. They've got some big division games to go, especially with the 2 Philly games and then the Miami games. I wanted to touch on Kyle Schwarber real quick because this is another guy that we were critical of early on in the season. Kyle Schwarber and Josh Bell were the 2 big bats that Mike Rizzo brought over in this never-ending quest to replace Anthony Rendon's production. And Kyle Schwarber and Josh Bell both got off to a pretty terrible start. But here's the last 7 games for Kyle Schwarber. 26 at-bats, 10 hits, 6 bombs, 11 RBI, 385 average, 414 on base, and over it's a 1.077 slugging. Just absolutely insane numbers for Schwarber of late, especially the 5 home runs over the weekend, coming off of a weekend that he hit 3, I believe, the previous weekend. I mean, he's up to 18 bombs on the season right now. So Kyle Schwarber has been kind of everything this team's needed right now because of what they're not getting with Juan Soto.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing as well is that, when you look at Juan Soto, he still is leading a lot of categories for this team. Besides Trey Turner, obviously. He does have a 40% OBP and all that kind of stuff that we really need to get guys on base. And that's what Mike Rizzo said the other day on the radio that he was talking about, we're leading this stat and this stat, we're getting guys on base, we're getting guys in runners in scoring position, but you're not scoring the runs. I mentioned that last week. So with Schwarber getting the home runs, you don't have to have that runners in scoring position stat of how many percentage are you getting in. Are you only going 2 for 10 when you get guys in scoring position or whatever it may be? So him stepping up, just like you said earlier when we were trashing Fetty and different things of that nature. We were trashing Schwarber. We were trashing Josh Bell. Now, Josh Bell, he's not doing as well as Schwarber has, but he has picked it up somewhat as of late. It's not that hard to pick up your average when you're hitting like 160. But at the same time, all you need is like 2 hits and you're back up to 200. But when you're looking at Schwarber, 18 bombs is a ton. And if I'm not mistaken, the league lead is around 21, 22, something of that nature, I believe.
Yeah, I think like Tatis is up there.
And Acuna's up there as well. I saw Acuna tied. It was with 16 like a week and a half ago or something of that nature.
Yeah, let's see. MLB home run leaders right now. Home runs. It's Vladdy Jr. 23, Shohei 23, Tatis 22, Matt Olson 20, Acuna has 19, and so Schwarber is right there in the mix. Salvi Perez, Semien, Schwarber, and Rafael Devers all with 18, as well as a couple other guys. So to have a lefty hitter in the top of this list here that's not Juan Soto is kind of one of those things for us. I mean, we'll take it.
And that's the biggest thing, too, is you always have to look. I always think of total bases. That stat is so underrated because of the sole fact, are you getting on base and are you getting extra base hits? Are you stealing bases? Are people moving you around or whatever it may be? And that's why you see Trey Turner is usually really high on that because of his stolen base average. And Juan Soto is typically up there as well. But Kyle Schwarber right now is second on the team with 116 total bases, which total bases is basically every base you hit. For people out there who don't really know that stat, it's just kind of like one of those like nerdy stats that some people like to talk about. But I just like that because he's going out there, and obviously if he's getting 3 bombs in a game, that's 12 total bases, so that's a lot to add on to. But the biggest thing is, like we said, with Juan Soto, not playing up to his full potential, I guess you could say right now. Kyle Schwarber getting 6 bombs or whatever in the last 5 days or something like that is something that you have to look at and say, this is the type of production that we saw from Harper when he was here, where he would carry the team for a month and he would be hitting a bomb every 9 at bats or something like that. And he'd go out there and basically win games for you because every now and then there'd be a guy on base and he'd hit a 2-run bomb or a 3-run bomb or something of that nature, to the point where all of a sudden you see him go out there and save games for you if your pitcher's struggling, if your star player like a Juan Soto right now is not playing to his full potential, things of that nature. But Yan Gomes, you have to give him a shout out too, because he actually had 2 very good games. I think they were against the Pirates, but at the same time, they had one against the Pirates and one against the Mets in the opening game against the Mets. So he basically got two wins for us as well, and he's not known to be a hitter, but he's hitting 252. So you just got to look at these guys and say, like, hey, some guys are stepping up when they need to right now when the season is pretty much in the balance where the division is so close. So we'll have to see what happens, but Schwarber has definitely stepped up his game, and we're happy to see it, no doubt.
Yeah, the hope is that, and Trey Turner's still been having a good season, but still his power numbers haven't been there as much. And then hopefully Juan Soto really turns things around. They're going to need him if they want to take this division. Real quick before we move on, just wanted to touch on the league as a whole as far as kind of where things stand right now. In the East, you've got the Red Sox leading that division with the Rays right there with them. The Rays have lost 6 in a row, so they're in trouble. That's why they're bringing up Wander Franco, one of their top prospects. You got the White Sox leading the Central with Cleveland about 2.5 behind them. You've got the Astros and the A's deadlocked in the West for the first place spot there. We've already talked about the NL East. The Central, the Brewers and the Cubs are tied for the division lead there. And then in the West, it's been all topsy-turvy this year because you got the Giants now 1.5 games up on the Dodgers, who are and they're about 5 games up on the Padres. So the big thing that I want to point out is with the Nats is, I mean, just already looking at the wild card race, and I know it's June, so I don't know why we're looking at it, but at the same time, you got to understand that for the Nats to get a playoff spot this year with how competitive these divisions are, you're really going to need to win the division. I don't think the Nats are going to be able to pull a wild card spot this year when you've got a team like the Padres, the Dodgers, the Brewers, the Cubs, the Cardinals, the Reds. I mean, all these kind of teams, and even the teams in the division, like the Phillies and the Braves, who will be fighting for wild card spots too. So I just think that, I like the trajectory of this team right now. I like this little streak, a long way to go. I'm a little more confident. I think I saw on Baseball Reference, they have like an 8% chance to make the postseason right now, so that it's starting to slowly go up. That would be nice. But we'll keep an eye on it.
Right.
We'll keep an eye on it. We're going to keep watching this team. It's been a fun run here. But let's move on briefly to the team that plays indoors in the AC instead of this 95-degree weather. Mike's getting burnt every game. Here we go.
The Washington Wizards.
The Washington Wizards have indeed fired. Well, not even fired. They chose not to bring back. His contract was already up. Both sides weren't able to come to an agreement on a future contract, and Scott Brooks is no more. And now the attention turns to the upper management of this team and Tommy Shepard and Ted Leonsis on who they will hire to replace Scott Brooks and take over the direction of this team. A team that right now has a couple superstars in Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook, at least for now, depending on how the contracts shake shape up. You've got some young talent in Rui Hachimura, some young talent in Daniel Gafford. You've got a couple draft picks here and there to work with, and then you've got some role guys that you have to figure out what to do with. Right now, Mike, it doesn't seem like there's really any indication on where this team might be leaning as far as a candidate. I mean, I put a list together of some that names that have been thrown out there. The couple names that I'm hearing the most are Wes Unseld Jr. and Sam Cassell are the two names that I'm hearing the most, and then occasionally Becky Hammond's name is thrown in there. But if you look at the list, I mean, there's a lot of pretty quality coaches that are needing jobs right now in the league.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is I was kind of surprised that Stan Van Gundy got let go.
After 1 year.
One season. One season. There must have been a rift inside the locker room or something of that nature because, I mean, why would you give up Stan Van Gundy when he's had some proven track records with the Magic and different things of that nature? And, the Pelicans, if Zion didn't get hurt the last little few games of the season, they could have possibly had a run. Who knows? But, hey, that's their own deal. But, yeah, so looking at your list that you made, it's a very nice list, by the way, so congratulations. Good job. I think if you're looking at certain things that you might want, like you said, Sam Cassell, he was with the Wiz for 5-6 years, so he's kind of used to the nature of the Wizards. But honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards Becky Hammond. I mean, I don't know why, but I just think that with her being in the Spurs organization behind Pop and basically having that mentality of, discipline and, you want to have those role players. Like, I mean, you had the guys like Tony Parker and Tim Duncan. Kawhi was there. I mean, you had guys that were there that went through that system, and they all worked together as a team. And Pop was so good at doing that for years and years. I mean, look at Danny Green. Danny Green was a beast for them for a few years. And you look at it and say, can Becky Hammond go in there and make a splash where she goes in there and brings a different philosophy into the game? Now, everyone always says, and I'm one person to say it too, that women's basketball and men's basketball is completely different. Now, yes, they're playing basketball, okay? It's not as different as, say, like women's and men's lacrosse, for instance, because they have different rules. But women's rules are similar to the men's rules pretty much, and it's a different philosophy, though. So could that bring in something different where she kind of mixes in the women's game and also Pop's game from the Spurs? Now, you could also lean towards, okay, Wes Unseld Jr., he's been an assistant as well. His dad is a legend for DC and stuff of that nature. Sam Cassell, who's been in the Sixers organization and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not trying to lean towards former players like Jason Kidd or Chauncey Billups or anything like that, because I think this is also, when you look also at the Steve Nash thing with the Nets, I think this is a little bit different of a situation because we don't have 3 all-stars on this team.
No.
So I don't think like a guy like a Jason Kidd or a Billups could just come in there.
Wait, you're telling me Raul Neto and Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook aren't the next big 3?
Yeah. Oh, well, they could be if Neto wants to stop going 0 for 6 when I bet on him to make 1 3-pointer. Yeah, I just think that I'm leaning a little bit towards Hammond just because, I mentioned it a few weeks ago when we talked about Scott Brooks, and I was like, Becky Hammond could be on the roster here. But I think she's been in that organization enough, and I think because of her past history of playing and different things of that nature, I think she has that mentality, can bring, kind of like a Brad Stevens type of impact into this team, because Brad Stevens came in and he had a whole different philosophy because he was at Butler for so long, and obviously he came in for the Celtics and made a huge splash, and they've been solid ever since and everything of that nature. So I just think that if you bring her in, you might get a different type of maybe Ron Rivera type culture shock, where he comes in and says we're disciplined, we're this, and we're bringing a different culture into this team and this organization. And now you look at the Washington football team as being possibly a leader in the clubhouse for the division this year, because we've seen multiple analysis or analysts, I should say, on different networks saying that they lean towards the WFT as the leader in the clubhouse to actually win the division. So Becky Hammond is kind of my top choice as of right now. Things can change, but I think that Tommy Shepard really needs to get on this search and really needs to think about what their direction is and who matches that direction the most.
The other teams that are looking for a coach, because this is a factor as well, is if you are a hot candidate out there for a head coaching job, you are going to have multiple offers and you have to kind of figure out which team is worth it to kind of either help with the rebuild or whatever the situation is. Right now, you've got the Boston Celtics without a coach. You've got Dallas because Rick Carlisle stepped down. You had Indiana who needs a coach. New Orleans needs a coach now. Orlando, Steve Clifford, and then parted ways. Portland is a very, very attractive spot right now with Terry Stotts gone now, and then, of course, the Wizards. So while we would love to have a Wes Unseld Jr. or Becky Hammon, I think the tough part is going to be when these candidates look at Washington, do they see the team that they want to even go to at this stage versus a Boston, versus a Portland, versus a Dallas? I mean, do you want to go coach Luka Doncic, one of the best players in the league? Do you want to go in Boston? Do you want to go coach Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and those guys, some of the best players in the league? I mean, or go to New Orleans, like you said, Zion. I mean, yes, the Wizards, Washington's attracted too. I mean, Bradley Beal, one of the best scorers that are, Russell Westbrook, a veteran that has played so well over the years.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I think I would lean towards, I think that we're going to see Wes Unseld Jr. be hired as the head coach for this team. I think, I have my Wes Unseld jersey, my Bullets jersey here in the closet somewhere.
You're prepared.
He's he's a legend, and he played on the Bullets, and they know him here locally, and it's an interesting hire. I mean, I think one thing about Wes Unseld Jr., they supposedly he's a really big preacher of defense, and that's really what this team needs. He's been with a Denver team that's obviously has some terrific talent, and he's been able to coach them and being the top assistant over there. So I feel like Wes Unseld Jr. will likely be the hire. I'm with you. I wouldn't mind a Becky Hammon hire. I wouldn't mind a Sam Cassell hire. I was actually pushing for Sam Cassell to be hired after Randy Whitman was let go, and that didn't happen. So, it's interesting. You just have to remember these other teams that are out there, and if you were the head coach right now, where would you lean? I mean, if you had the ability to coach any of these teams, I mean, I'll pose the question to you. I mean, if you could coach the Celtics, the Mavs, the Pacers, the Pellies, the Magic, the Blazers, or the Wizards, where would you go?
And that's the biggest thing, too, is like you mentioned, there are so many stars out there that are leading teams. Obviously, Portland has Dame. You got Jason Tatum for Boston. You got Zion for the Pellies. I mean, you got Bradley Beal for the Wizards. So, and Luka, obviously, for the Mavs. So you're looking at these top things that people and these coaches are looking at. I think the Wizards are a dark horse coaching candidacy because of the sole fact that you do have a very good scorer and leader in Bradley Beal, but you also got Russ, who still has some gas in the tank, and that's a big deal because you always want that secondary star. Now, Portland has C.J. McCollum and Jaylen Brown, as you mentioned, in Boston, but I think some of these coaches, these candidates, should look at, am I going to really get considered or hired as the coach in some of these places? Because Boston is going to be something that everyone's going to want to have because they got Jason Tatum and, like I said, Jaylen Brown. But you also see Dame. Dame's one of the guys that leads into the playoffs every single year. Same thing with Luka. Dame is possibly the best point guard in the entire NBA, possibly. It's up for debate. But you also have Luka, who's basically like all over the place where he gets triple doubles left and right.
Where would you go if you had if you were, let's say, you could go to any of these programs, any of these teams? Where would you go?
I mean, despite my Luka bias, because I would obviously love to coach Luka, but I would go towards Boston mainly because they have two very young stars. They unloaded Kemba, and they have the option because they unloaded Kemba, and that was actually a pretty good trade for both teams. You got a couple young guys to add to Boston, but you also have Kemba and his contract basically leaving. But that's the biggest thing. I think I would lean towards Boston, but the Wizards are definitely a candidate up there. I would say easily in the top 4 teams because I think there are 6 total ones that you're looking at. And I saw Portland. Right. I saw an article that Portland was like the least likely for someone to go to. Now I don't know why, but that's what they were saying. But overall, there's a lot of great spots out there that you can go to, and I think that this is definitely something that people got to look at and say, hey, The Wizards, I think they should make a splash because, hey, you're going after like Randy Whitman. You're going after, Scotty Brooks. You're going after guys that, you don't want to you don't want a journeyman. You don't want a guy that's basically failed or done this or done that in certain places. So I think that the Wizards are in the top 4 out of the 6. Are they the top 2 spots? No, but I would lean, if I was going to be coaching, I would lean towards Boston. But that's just my point of view because I like young stars. I like young players that you can build around.
The interesting thing with Boston is now Brad Stevens would be kind of your boss in a way because he's moved into the front office. Right. We'll see kind of how that dynamic plays out. I mean, this is a guy that's had the reins here from the coaching perspective. How much input is he going to have from the front office now? It might be tough to work in those conditions, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I definitely could see Chauncey Billups going to Portland and maybe possibly coaching there. And who knows who the Pellies are going to get. This would be their 3rd coach in 3 years for Zion. So just a lot of instability there. So we'll keep an eye on it. Again, my official show prediction is Wes Unseld Jr. is the new head coach of the Washington Wizards. And mark it down. We'll clip it. We'll have it ready to go in case it happens. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on the.
And you're leaning. You want Sam Cassell, though. That's who you want, right?
I would love Sam Cassell. I would like Sam Cassell to come coach this team. I think the hire is going to be Wes Unseld.
I'm gonna say the same thing. I'm gonna say the same thing. I think you are right with the prediction that we're gonna get Wes Unseld Jr. because it's kind of an easy pick. But you go Sam Cassell, I go Becky Hammond for who I want.
Got it. All right, and I can't argue with that either. I think Becky Hammond would be great. Looking ahead this week, as I mentioned earlier, the Nats have 2 games against Philly and then 4 against the Miami Marlins. Let's get into the final lap here, people. Quick 90 seconds of quick analysis on big stories in sports. Here we go. Jon Rahm wins the U.S. Open.
That was an unbelievable win for him, obviously, with his 2 weeks ago unfortunate circumstance with COVID. But that was huge because the last day was filled with major winners in the top 5 spots. It was kind of crazy. Great win for him.
The Tampa Bay Rays are going to call up the MLB top prospect, Wander Franco, to play this week.
Desperate times call for desperate measures, and you said it earlier. They've lost 6 in a row, and they don't want to lose that lead in the AL East. So, hey, do whatever you got to do.
We have a couple hockey series all tied up. You got the Golden Knights and the Canadiens tied up 2-2. And then you have the Lightning and the Isles tied up 2-2. You've been keeping an eye on these series, Mike?
I have. Not so much the Western Conference because I don't care about the Western Conference, but I do think the Isles might upset the Tampa Bay Lightning because the Lightning are basically like the Dodgers. The Dodgers are just loaded, and so are the Lightning with talent. And I'm hoping that the Isles can come through because I'm a Barry Trotz guy.
Alvin Kamara is now a NASCAR ambassador. He's trying to grow the attention of NASCAR, Mike.
Whatever the hell an ambassador is, I don't know. It's like an endorser. What does that even mean?
Who knows? Tom Brady and Patty Mahomes are the Madden cover athletes. Both of them, 2 Madden cover athletes.
My favorite Madden cover athlete was Mike Vick because everyone got pissed off because everyone would use him and just run around with QB sneaks. And bootlegs.
Right.
But, yeah, that's definitely a different conversation we should have is our favorite Madden cover athletes over the last 15, 16 years.
Yeah, I think one of our drafts that we'll do coming up is video game covers.
That's a good one.
I think would be a fun one. So mark it down. And then one last thing here. The Yankees the other day turned a game-ending triple play.
No, I didn't see that, but, I mean, who are they playing?
I don't even know. I just know that.
That's just embarrassing. I mean, obviously that does maybe happens once a season for the entire MLB, once maybe twice, but that's just embarrassing when it ends the game in that fashion because you know that their guys are on base. So that's the thing.
It was against Oakland. And it was their 3rd triple play of the season.
Oh wow! So I was wrong about that. The triple play. I wonder if it was a strike him out, throw him out, and then someone tried to steal home maybe.
It's a record-tying 3rd triple play of the season, which is just nuts. Because I guess the MLB record is 3 in a season.
Yeah,
I would guess.
That's crazy.
Yeah, the franchise had never turned more than one triple play in a season, and now has tied a major league record for most in a season. So there's been 11 other teams that have gotten 3 triple plays in a season. So and just think about this: we're only in June. I mean, there could be other opportunities to do that. Let's move on to a little bit of trivia action here.
Here we go.
As Mike presents me with a little bit of DC sports trivia.
Okay, you got to know Washington, D.C. sports trivia game. Found a card that has one decent question that does not deal with the formerly known Washington Redskins, the WFT. So this one is a Washington Nationals question.
Okay.
I think Ben's going to get this pretty easily, but I'm not going to bet all my chips on it.
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't bet all of it on. I mean, there were periods. I know a lot of Nats trivia, but I'm sure there are periods of time that maybe I was too busy studying. Well, not studying in school. I was pretending to study and really playing video games. So I don't know. We'll see what the time.
Well, this is a 1 year past the opening season, so it's a 2006. Okay. So you were in high school.
I was in high school. I might have even been middle school. I graduated in 2011.
Oh, maybe.
So.
Yeah, actually, no. You were probably in 8th grade. Okay, because I was a sophomore in 2006.
Yeah, 2006 Tigers World Series run, I believe.
Oh, so you weren't paying attention to the Nats too much then. Ooh.
No, Tigers had a hell of a team that year. Okay, all right, but let's see. I know a little Nats.
All right, remember, you get one question if you need it.
Sure.
It's more impressive if you don't. In 2006, what Nationals left fielder hit 46 home runs and stole 41 bases to join Jose Canseco, Mr. Barry Bonds, and A-Rod in the MLB's 40-40 club? I'll repeat it.
All right,
in 2006, so for the people at home, obviously. What Nationals left fielder hit 46 bombs and stole 41 bases to join Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds, A-Rod in the MLB's 40-40 club?
All right, so I have a guy in mind, and I'm debating whether or not to use my question or not, because I'm pretty sure I know this. So you're saying this is the year after the Nats arrived?
Yeah, so it's 2006.
They arrived in 2005,
yes,
and this guy was 2006, and it's a left fielder. I mean, I'm going to forego the use of my question.
Oh, boy.
And I'm just going to go immediately with Alfonso Soriano.
Ding, ding, ding.
Oh, okay.
I knew you were going to get it pretty easily, but again, I didn't want to dig through so many cards where I got to the bottom of the stack before there actually was a Nats question in there. That didn't involve Bryce Harper.
No, that was a pretty good question because, I mean, I knew Soriano was part of the 40-40 club or whatever, but I wasn't sure when he did that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure, and I thought for some reason that Soriano had only been on the Nats for one season, so he must have been on for at least 2 then.
Yeah. He came from the Cubs,
for him
right?
To get that. Well, yeah, but he was an Expos guy too.
Okay.
I think he was. I don't know. I mean, again,
He was on a lot of teams. He was on a lot of teams.
But right, because he was a Yankee, obviously at one point too. So, but yeah, okay, Alfonso Soriano, man, that's pretty wild to think that. Honestly, for a long time he was one of the most famous guys to play for the Nats.
Oh yeah.
Until Bryce Harper was drafted and started playing. Maybe, I mean, obviously the Mount Rushmore now of the Nats would have to be, like Nats history would have to be like Strasburg, Max, maybe you go Harper, and then you could go Zim because of the face of the franchise, or you could go Soto because of the World Series heroics and the playoff heroics. It'd be tough. Because I feel like Harper's got to be on the Mount Rushmore there just because, I mean,
huge impact.
Huge impact. NL MVP, that 1 year and huge name in sports for a long time. But I feel like that's a pretty fair Mount Rushmore, right? I mean, you got Scherzer and Strauss.
Yeah.
And you've got Harper. And then that fourth spot, that's a tough thing. You go with Zim for the nostalgia of like, hey, this guy's been with the franchise since its existence. He kind of deserves that spot. Or do you go Soto? See, my thinking is I think you give Zim the spot, but give Soto the opportunity to possibly replace Harper on the Mount Rushmore the longer he plays in D.C. and the more stuff he puts up. That would be my
That's reasonable. I think you could definitely go with that. I mean, you obviously know my opinion about Ryan Zimmerman, but at the same time, he has been here in his entire career. He has had some games and some heroics at certain times. And his stats, besides his average and stuff like that, sometimes he has those certain years. I don't think he was as impactful as Harper was for those, like I mentioned earlier in our Nats segment, where Harper would carry the team. Now, I don't know if Ryan Zimmerman has carried the team in that sense, but at the same time, it's everyone's opinion. But you could put him on the Mount Rushmore because everyone says the most impactful guy. I think Soto is going to be on there because there is no way that Mike Rizzo is going to let Juan Soto play for a single other team.
You would hope
in this world, because obviously,
you would hope.
You think about it. He's got Anthony Rendon through the draft from Rice. He got Bryce Harper. They both left because they didn't want to pay him. And he also was, basically finding Ronald Acuna Jr. as well at the same time as Juan Soto, because we could have both those guys, but he ended up going with Juan Soto only. And, when you look at that, he's had these finds that have been pretty much star players, and, 2 of them have left. 1 of them never came here, and Juan Soto was pretty much the last one out of those 4. So, if Juan Soto stays here his entire career, he's going to put up some big numbers and possibly be in the HOF.
For sure. I think and our personal show, Mount Rushmore,
Yeah.
for sure. I do want to get to your gripe, but first we'll hit up the money line real quick. Let's give our picks of the week. So, Mike, bad week. Not only did you get sunburned, but you also you got burned by your teams. You went 0-2 with your picks.
Yes.
I had a 500 week. I went 1-1. So right now, currently, Mike is 10-10 on the season. I am 8-12. So I'm inching closer to that 500 mark. It would help if I have a nice little 2-0 week this week. I'm going to go Clippers for my lock.
Right.
I'm going to say they even up the series. Now, I want the Suns to win that series. I think I enjoy watching the Suns play. I would love if they play in the NBA Finals. But I just think the Clippers are going to even this series up. I think they're going to win game 2. My upset, I'm going to take locally the Washington Mystics over the Seattle Storm on Wednesday. Storm are like 12-2. The Mystics, I think, are 6-6 or something like that. So I'm going to say the Mystics get the job done on Wednesday, pull off the upset.
They got some star power on the Mystics. They can do some damage. So we shall see about that. I like your upset pick. I'm going to have to tune into that game just to see if they win or not. I'm going to go with the Suns taking a 2-0 series lead. I just think that they're too powerful for the Clippers. The Clippers do have some star power, but I think some of the guys have been banged up with injuries and different things of that nature. And the Suns, yes, they've been banged up and so on and so forth, but they do have Devin Booker, and Devin Booker is just a beast. So I'm going to go with that one. So that'll be a 1-game swing for both of us, depending on who wins. And then my upset, the Angels over the Giants with my man Shohei Ohtani on the hill for the LA Angels. Obviously, like Ben said, I went 0-2 last week, my first time in many weeks going 0-2, mainly because, and I said this to Ben earlier, both my teams that I picked in the MLB lost by 1 run. So you can see how salty, how much Florida salt air I was having in those 2 days.
You know what really grinds my gears? 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 You, America. And that, people, is what grinds my gears.
All right, Mike.
All right.
We teased it. We saved it for the end of the show. What do you got?
I will try to keep this, again, short and sweet, because I do want to hear your thought about Philly, but if we get to that, we can, unless you want to save it for next week as well.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
So my biggest gripe is airports, at least when you talk about traveling, okay? Because airports are just the worst. Fort Lauderdale has one of the worst airports known to man, at least that I've been to. I've been to probably 5, maybe 6 airports in the U.S., been to 3 in Florida, but Fort Lauderdale is just, embarrassing. I mean, number one, you're in the COVID time still, technically. Florida, not really. They don't really have a lot of mask mandates and all that kind of stuff.
They never really wore masks anytime during the pandemic.
Exactly,
so,
yeah. So when you're looking at it, they just had their security line and people checking things and different things of that nature literally within 10 feet of everything. The security line, like this one guy was like literally within 2 arm lengths from me, and he was the one that was in front of the line. I was 5 rows back. Like, he was so close, because they had those little those little poles that had like the tape that you like stretch out, like whatever the line dividers. They were like literally so close that like you would like hit one, and they had no like arrows where to go, like the security thing where you had to get your boarding pass and that little kiosk and all that stuff. Like they had like the bag row coming through there, like the line. They had all these. It was embarrassing.
Chaos.
It was chaos. And then you had this one guy, the guy who checks like your your ID and stuff like that before you get to security. He just sits there and stares at you. And at the Fort Lauderdale, you have to put your ID in, and then he looks at the ID and just looks at you, but he didn't say anything. I saw people doing it. So my girlfriend was trying to do it, and she looked over at me and said, "My dad would be so pissed off right now if that guy didn't say anything. Like, tell us what to do. That's your job." Like, it's just funny, like, when people, just don't care. Like, you put your ID in, and you're just like he's just staring at you, and I'm like, "Am I good?" And he just, like, stares at me, and then my ID comes out, I pick it up, and I leave. He didn't say a single word to me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's not that hard. It's not, I mean, look, a crappy job is a crappy job. Nobody likes working at the airport, I'm sure, but at the same time, it's like, hey, just make it a little bit better by at least telling us what you want us to do.
Yeah, and then you have the people that are in line that are trying to yell from 6 people away, like, "Honey, it's the barcode down!" Like it's like, and then she doesn't know what she's doing, and the guy is just still sitting there saying nothing, and it's embarrassing. And then, not to mention, this is the first time, and I've always had good luck at airports. I don't really get delayed. I don't do anything like that. Okay, but then you have the situation where on our flights there and back. Number one, they said we had to check our bag, but we saw 1 million people on our flight have, a carry-on. They didn't do anything. They didn't tag it. They didn't do anything like that. So we paid $150 for there and back for checked bags when all these other people didn't. Oh man, we were salty with that. And then on the way there, we sat together. But then on the way back, they said, "See, agent, you need your seat assignment." Because I tried to check in before anyone says anything. I tried to check us in both times online, like they emailed and texted me and all that kind of stuff. And, of course, when I tried to check in, they say, "Can't check you in at this time. Check in at the gate," or whatever the hell it said. So I'm like, okay, why are you texting me to check in if I can't do it? So that's that. And then we get to the stupid gate. And we're on a United flight that has 3 rows and 3 rows, and then they seat us literally on the opposite ends of the plane, separate from each other, which makes no sense because if you put your seat in or you book a ticket with somebody else, they should just, put, okay, these 2 people here, these 3 people here, you go.
You would think.
It's like Tetris. Like, you just put
Common
people
sense.
there. And it's like a puzzle or something like that. But no, they sat her in the middle row. We both got middle row, which was fantastic. The middle row, she had row 11. Meanwhile, I get row 35, which is literally like I'm sitting on the toilet. Like
you're on the engine.
Yeah, I was literally.
Oh my
and all I could think about after I was being irritated, which I'll get to in a second by the people next to me, was like, when you see like a TV show or a movie where the plane like breaks off in the back and she's in the front and I'm in the back.
It would have been you.
And I'll be like, all right, see you later.
You would have been gone.
That was ridiculous. Not to mention, the United has like the DirecTV and all that stuff, which is nice. And I'm also in the middle. I got this guy next to me who's fidgeting with a damn newspaper. Like, who reads newspapers anymore, number one? And number two, dude, the newspaper is wider than the seat. I'm like reading the newspaper while you're putting it in front of me as well. And then...
Yeah, newspaper is not... It's not a good airplane read. Or if you have it, you got to fold it in half.
Exactly.
You got to read it at half bits at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
And so he's doing that, and he keeps grabbing stuff out of his bag, and he said sorry like 4 or 5 times. And then meanwhile, I'm like, okay, that's 1 armrest down. So he took 2 armrests. Then the next lady next to me, and meanwhile, like I said, I'm burned to a crisp to the point where I don't want to touch anybody. These people keep touching and banging into me and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, God, you're dying.
And I'm just sitting there sweating my ass off, and I'm like, this is ridiculous, to the point where all of a sudden I'm sitting next to this lady, and she keeps using both armrests, number one. Number two, my stupid remote for my TV is on the armrest, and she keeps putting her arm over it. And then at one point, she turned the TV off, and there's no off button. I don't even know how she turned it off. She must have had 3 combinations of buttons or some code or something. And finally, she got up to go to the bathroom. I'm like, thank God. So I finally could watch the damn U.S. Open. Only thing that kept me sane on the entire plane. And I was so thrilled that she went to the bathroom that one time so I could watch an hour and a half of the damn U.S. Open. But then the funny thing is that my girlfriend Jess was all the way in the front. And she said there was one guy that was wearing gloves. He was wearing a face mask. I don't know, maybe face shield too. I don't know. He was wearing a hazmat suit basically. And apparently she gets on, and the guy looks over and says, "Hey, I'm vaccinated. 2 shots." And she was like,
"Oh my God.
Nice." And then all of a sudden, he was like, "So how about you? You vaccinated?" And she was like, why are you asking me this? And The fun.
This is what small talk is now. Is like.
Well, that's the funniest
It's
part.
just
dude,
asking asking if you've been
Yeah,
vaccinated.
exactly. Everyone's so sheltered now, and that's the funny thing is that literally. He was watching the U.S. Open too, and she wished I was next to him because he sat there, and she just kept laughing at him because he kept like whenever Bryson DeChambeau, I guess, is his favorite guy, and every time he like made a putt,
and that guy had a collapse.
yeah, he did. So I wish that we were on the plane, longer so we could see his reaction. Apparently, he was sitting there cheering and like getting all pissed off when he missed a putt. So he was like, damn it, and all this kind of stuff. And she's just sitting there watching, like, what the hell?
If you're unless Bryson DeChambeau is like your relative. You don't need to be reacting like that unless you're at home.
Yeah.
If you're at home, react however you want, especially if you got a little scratch on the line, little money on the line. But if you're on an airplane with other strangers and you're watching it on crappy DirecTV, small TV.
Standard def.
I mean, yeah, it's just, what are you doing? Also, whenever you get hot on the plane, all you got is that tiny little jet of air. And they're like twisted a little bit. You get a little bit more air, and you're like, it's just the same amount. It's not more's not coming out. Oh, it's the worst. I'm so glad I haven't flown for years
dude,
now
it
at
was
this point.
one of the most miserable flights I've ever had. Like I've had a flight that's comparable to a flight that I had on Spirit Airlines to Chicago.
Oh yeah.
And that's just man, it was rough because again, like I said, I'm burnt to a crisp. I'm on the damn runway. They said they had a plane malfunction with a plane in front of us. They had to turn them around or do something crazy. So that was that. So it was a 25, 30-minute delay when we're on the damn runway, and then we finally land. And because I'm all the way in I was gonna say a cuss word, but all the way in Egypt in the back of the plane, then they wouldn't let us off in time, and then they kept making an announcement like, oh, there's people that have other flights, so mind your business or whatever before you get up.
Oh yeah, you got to let them rush out, or
and
whatever.
Then everyone
Meanwhile,
gets up.
everybody does that. Yeah.
There's one lady who was behind me and her, in the line to get on the plane. And, of course, she's sitting there and she's, like, asking this random woman that's in Fort Lauderdale about, I have a flight to Munich I need to get to. It's like, well, you're not getting on that flight because we're already delayed, getting off the damn airplane. And then the flight attendants were talking to her the entire time about the damn Munich. I already know the history of Germany by this point.
There you go. You're a genius.
Oh, man.
At this point.
It was definitely rough, but there's a lot more stories to it. But I just getting into it. I mean, I think it's reactivating my sunburn right now. I'm getting so frustrated just talking about it.
Yeah, we'll go put some more whatever they have you aloe.
Oh, it's more powerful than aloe. That's
strength
sure.
aloe on your arms, and it's good to have you back. And we are excited to have another week of action here for the Washington Nationals. Keeping an eye on them this week here. Some games. We'll keep an ear out for the Wizards and possible head coach replacements. We're getting closer and closer to training camp for the Washington football team. And then, of course, the Caps, the big expansion draft is on the way soon enough. So plenty going on in the DC sports scene. The best way to keep in touch with the show, follow us on Twitter at the DC Crossover. Follow Mike at Cerrone16. And also follow The Contender. Again, that's Contender with a K. Our show streams live on Tuesdays at noon and replays throughout the week. And you can also catch plenty of other content. They've got a baseball show now. They've got Chicago sports shows as well, Windy City Breeze, and Big Joe Z, I forget. But shout out to all those other content on The Contender. And, please like, comment, and subscribe to the podcast as well. We will see you all next week. This has been another episode of the DC Crossover.